Let's look at how we could use Microsoft Excel to actually graph out our data and make all of our data analysis much simpler and quicker, and it also provides a lot more power, especially whenever it comes to your best fit lines, error bars, and if you're going to choose in the future linearizing your graphs needed for physics. Now, here we have a basic research question. Microsoft Excel, this is running on a Windows PC computer. It would also work on a Mac, and anything with full Microsoft Excel. Unfortunately, you're not going to get all the things. We'll talk about the things that the versions on mobile does and the things that it might not do. Now, a basic research question: how's the height independent variable that a ball is released from near the Earth's surface affect the time dependent variable it takes to fall? And so then I had already made out my raw data table that might look like the raw data table, at least hopefully it would look similar to the raw data table that you would have put in just a regular notebook there. And so here we go. We've got this all made out with heights. It looks like I chose ranging from 1 up to 3, and then times here recorded across 5 trials, right, for each independent variable value. And normally, whenever you get your table set up, right, your uncertainty of your height and your units were built into the header. The uncertainty of the time looks like this stopwatch went down to the hundredths of a second. All of that's absorbed into the header because the uncertainty is the same for all of these numbers down in this column there. So standard stuff that you already know to do there. But then you would have built all this out, absorbing units and uncertainty up into the headers until you get to the average time. And now under the average time part, you would get out your handy dandy calculator normally, and you start typing away. Much easier, though, whenever you start using Excel. Now, before I get to that, let me talk about how I set up this data table. Few buttons in Excel. Notice how I took all of these boxes, now I'm highlighting the ones down below, and I made it into just one big box. That's because I use the Merge and Center button over here, so under the Home tab. Merge and Center. Also, notice how the words seem to stack on top of each other, because if you just start typing somewhere else, hi, how are you today? Then it kind of spills over into the next box, and if you type something out there, then it just kind of cuts it all off. If instead you come back and you hit Wrap Text, it will pull it down below. Now I'm going to undo what I just did there to make sure everything stays nice and pretty. Let's see some other things that you might need to know. The plus minus sign. Where did I get the plus minus sign from? I came into Insert, and then I found the Symbol button. Now, depending on which version of Excel, things could look a little bit different or could be in different places for you. One way or another, all of these features still exist in your version of Excel, even if you're using a much older version of it. So you can still merge, you can still wrap, you can still highlight areas, and then come up here to your squares, or your borders, that is, and then tell it what type of borders you want to where everything looks nice. Like the average time, this is actually 3 columns, and I merged it to say average time. Reason for that is I need different cells for the average, which I'm going to put in here, and the uncertainties. In fact, let's go ahead and do that and show this power of Excel. So instead of getting out my handy dandy calculator to take these averages, I'm going to let Excel do it because Excel does all the math for me. Way I do that, hit the equal sign. The equal sign tells Excel, hey, let's do some math. So if I did equals 2 times 2, enter, it would give me 4. But a lot more powerful if we do something like this, equals, and Excel has a bunch of commands. If I start typing average, you see there are some commands down below that start to populate to give you an idea what you can type. So I'm going to finish typing out average, and then I'm going to put parentheses. And it opened my parentheses, and it says, hey, put all the numbers inside these parentheses you want averaging. So instead of typing 2, 3, 4, I'm going to use my mouse, and I'm simply going to click, hold down, and drag over all the numbers that I want averaged. Just like that. So I grab the entire row that I want to have averaged, close parentheses, enter, and it takes the average for me. Now, this could be a good time for me to point out something, and I purposely kind of left this in my data table down here. Notice how all of these seem to go down to the hundredths place, except for one of them. Because whenever you type something in Excel, let's say 1.00, it's going to automatically change it to just 1, because 1 and 1.00 mathematically is the same thing, but scientifically it's very different with significant figures. So you're going to end up needing to use these buttons up here, where you increase decimal or decrease decimal to get what you need. So I can get my 00 back. All of these are supposed to be down to the hundredths place. It matches the uncertainty. My stopwatch went down to the hundredths place. So maybe I need to come and, let's say, reduce and then expand back out to where I get them all back where I want. Notice now my 0.6 is now 0.60, which is what I was looking for. Now, cool thing here, we're going to have to fix the uncertainties of this guy also, or fix the precision of this guy also. Excel, pretty cool. I can come down to the next one and type average, right, open parentheses, grab, drag, close parentheses, boom, it does the average for me, hooray. Or I could do this even smarter. After you do it one time, remember 0.56, after you do it one time, you can let Excel predict what other ones are going to be based upon what you had up here. So you can look up in this part and see it's the average up from C6. Here's C6, right, C6, over to G6. There's the G6 cell. What I could do is I could come and get this little corner. See how there's a little inside of my green now highlighted box. There's a little box in the top, in the bottom right-hand corner. If I move my cursor over that, it changes to a crosshairs. Drag down, and it is going to fill in the other cells automatically predicting. Let go. It does all the averages for you. Really cool. And then I like to always go back and actually click on the cells to make sure it's what I wanted. So this cell down here, 0.782, is averaging from C10 to G10. Well, here is C10 all the way over to here is G10. So it's doing what I want. Now let's fix these decimals. These decimals looks like I have too many significant figures on most of these. My times, my stopwatch only went down to the hundredths place, so all of these should only go down to the hundredths place. So I need to adjust my decimals down to where there are only 2 decimals there for my average times. Now, let's go ahead and let's deal with my uncertainty. Now, the uncertainties of the average. Notice I set my data table up to where it wasn't in the same column, right? I've got another column where I put in the plus minus sign, and then I'm going to put my uncertainties there, kind of all underneath this average time header where I merged those 3 columns together in that cell. Now, here, I'm going to, for the average times, if you remember correctly, all my averages is the range cut in half, high minus low, divided by 2. And I could go through and I could pick out, okay, let's find my high. My high is 0.53, and so I could type in equals parentheses 0.53 minus what my low is 0.41 close parentheses divided by 2, and it would do the math for me, and there it is. Life is good. Or I could be a little bit wiser and I could use some Excel commands so then it can predict on all the cells underneath it. Equals parentheses max. There's a max command. Tell it to get the maximum of all of those guys, whatever the highest number is, minus min, open parentheses, get the min, it's the same one, get the lowest number of these guys. Now I've got to close off the parentheses. If you notice there's a parentheses starting right before the max, and so I'm putting the max minus the min, all in parentheses, divided by 2. Enter. And it does that. It gives me the max minus the min divided by 2. Just be careful, coming up here, look up here, with my parentheses. I had to put the max of the stuff minus the min of the stuff all within parentheses, right? Order of operations. I want that subtraction to be done first. Otherwise, it's not going to do that because of order of operations. Now, the power of doing that is, once again, I can grab and drag down, release, and it just does it all for me. Looks like I need to fix some decimals on that guy also there. All right, so now we've actually got all of our raw data done, and it's also very nice if you come in and you already have Excel open, you already have your raw data table built, you can bring a computer to the lab and actually type your data in live and already have the averaging. You could already set up your equals average of these guys already set up there. That just makes life very convenient. Now let's talk about graphing this. Let's assume here I have an independent, dependent variable. These are all direct measurements, height versus time. Let's graph it out properly just to get an idea of how Excel can graph, and then either in this video or in the next video, I'll talk about in this one a little bit more details with the graph. So I'm going to use this tab graph properly down here. You can always change the name of the tabs by hitting rename. So I'm going to come to this one. Now I've already built the presentations table, this would be here, in Microsoft Excel in another tab, and I could type in 1, 1.5, etc., or I could hit my equals, come back to a previous tab and say, hey, that cell needs to equal this cell, enter, pops back to the other tab where I was, and it makes the 1, once again, grab, drag, and it just fills it all in for me there, grabbing it from the other raw data table. Reason that I like that idea of being able to do that is, what if I'm in the middle of my lab and I realize, I can't make it all the way up to 3. These times actually are all about 2.75 meters. That's actually all my heights. Well, then it just automatically updates everywhere for me across all of my Excel sheets. Quite convenient. But we're saying that it's 3 right now. All right, so here we are back at our presentations table. I'm going to go get all of those average times. So I need this one, and now I'm going to grab and drag down. And I need my uncertainties, the range cut in half, to go over there. So this equals that, grab and drag down to where I have it all built into my presentations table. And now I need to actually graph it out. And I want to graph these guys, where displacement is my x and the average time is my y's. So I could highlight them, insert, and this is a scatter chart here, which is what we use in science, right? So I'm going to click and I only want the dots, and there it is, already done out for me. Now on these graphs, there's a little button whenever you click onto the graph. There's a little plus button there. I can hit that and choose, hey, I do need to be able to give it X and Y titles, right? I'm going to need error bars. Maybe I need a tread line on there, and I'm going to get back to that here on the next tab. Now for this specific physics lab, it's actually better to graph out time on the x-axis. So here I am, presentations table, I'm about to do a graph, and I've got the time over here. And so I am graphing the dependent variable on the x-axis, which is kind of backwards. Now I haven't highlighted anything, and I'm just going to hit scatter because notice that I have my uncertainties in the way there. We're going to talk about that with error bars. Now whenever I have a blank graph, I can hit select data. Whenever I hit that, I can choose to add, and this is what you do anytime the data is a little off. Add a series. So I'm going to add a series. I could give it a name if I want. I really don't feel like doing it right now. The x values equals all of these times, and so I'll highlight those. The y values, now be careful here. Erase the 1 and all of the other parentheses, but make sure to leave the equal sign. The equal sign is needed. Highlight the y's. Hit OK. Okay, and I have my data all plotted out for me. Next up, I'm going to go ahead and add that I want an axis title. I am going to need error bars, and I am going to need a tread line here, although I'm going to come back to that. So, and I already added the labels really quick while the video was paused to the X and Y axis. But anytime you need to change one of those, once you have the box, you just simply click in there. Maybe then I say time to fall from height. Something along those lines, maybe for my title. Now I have a little bit more formatting that I want to do. I already have error bars on here, so I'm going to click on an error bar here in the y-axis. Now the y-axis is the heights. Those have a constant error of 0.01. So I'm going to come over. Now I've got my format error bars. Click here. I do want up and down, and it is a fixed value of 0.01. which is going to end up being so small that I really can't see it. But the X value error bars, so now I'm going to click over into the X. The other way to do that is you click the drop down to choose that you want to deal with the X ones. Now, here I am going to scroll down on the X's and choose error amount, custom, specify a value, and then I can actually highlight the uncertainties that go with it, plus or minus 0.06, 0.05, etc., and have it make my error bars the right size. Lastly, I need to add a tread line, and so I'm going to show coming up here at the top left hand, scroll down to tread line. Always hit more tread line options down here so you get all of the possibilities. Linear is pretty good, but knowing this lab, because I'm looking for the acceleration of gravity, is an acceleration supposed to be a polynomial times squared here, and that's going to have nearly a perfect fit. Display equation on chart at the bottom, and display R squared value. All right, that's a brief overview of how some of the stuff that you can do with Excel. Anyway, we'll have a few other videos coming up that continue to go into it.